Yo, what is up everyone, and welcome back for yet another episode of the Off-Grid podcast. Thanks a lot for tuning back in, guys. We just keep it going. It's the new year, 2026. Let's go. Consistency is key. Woohoo! Right, this week's episode, this is a bit of a different one. It's the first time I've ever had a guest come back onto the podcast, and it is my dear friend, Lord Cuthbert. In this conversation, we talk about the adventures that we want to do ahead of this year and the time that him and I shook hands at the bottom of Ben Nevis with a future promise, overcoming fears in the outdoors, how I grew up in the same village as the adventurer Ranulph Fiennes, Cuth's experience doing scuba diving training in Indonesia, and patriotism in the UK. Also, we talk about wild camping protocol and respect in the UK. So yeah, a whole load of stuff that we talk about as we look ahead of the year, talk adventure, and have a bloody good laugh. Hope you guys love this episode. On with the podcast. Lord Cuthbert, welcome back to the Off-Grid podcast, the first ever guest that I've had twice on the show. How does it feel to have such an honour?
It is a massive honour, I'm not going to lie, but at the same time I completely expected to be back because I know I'm just irresistible. So
You're irresistible chocolate bar. Mate, it's good to have you back. It's good to be recording again. We've just been well, actually, just to show like what a mess this all is. To get into Kingston Uni, right? So like I do all the work here. I've got to go through the bloody fire exit because they're not happy with like non-students doing stuff here. So I had to go at the fire exit to get the Wi-Fi code. I had to think of someone I knew who was at uni. The only person I know is this boy that I used to babysit, and so I asked him for the Wi-Fi, and he gave me his code for like a university Wi-Fi for all the universities. And yeah, now we've had our teething issues for recording. This is startup life. This is the reality.
what do you do if the fire exit is closed?
Break an entry.
You don't give away your tricks, do you, too much? You're keeping them close to your chest as we're recording.
I'm saying too much.
Nice. Well, it's very
right,
professional.
Cuffy. Yeah, of course. Keep it above line. I wanted to chat with you, first of all, about the year ahead. It's January. People think about New Year's resolutions and what's coming up. And in vein of the podcast being about adventure, I thought we could start with any adventures. Is there anything where you're like, this year, that is the one, that's what I want to do? Or is there anything more generally that you want to do adventuring this year?
It depends what you class as a adventure, I suppose. How extreme are we talking? Are we just hiking trips or?
Yeah, mate, I think that's a good one. Yeah, anything. It could be a micro adventure, could be an overnight, it could be a good hike, or it could just be like going halfway across the world to a remote region and doing an expedition. It's whatever you want.
Yeah. No, for sure. I think there's a couple of things I've got planned in, a couple of things I want to get planned in, of which you are part of one of the plans. But I'd say first one is I'm actually skiing for the first time this year, which is a bit of an adventure in itself. I've never actually skied before, so that'll be good fun. Doing that in April. Have you ever been before? You have?
No, haven't been skiing. But yeah, I've heard it takes a long time to learn.
Yeah, so this will be my first time. We're going for a week, so I don't think I'm going to be any expert by the end of it. But no, looking forward to that. And then the other thing I've got planned in is going to Wales for a weekend, just to do some hiking and staying in like a proper little bunk bed sort of lodge sort of things. That'd be really good fun. Outside of that, no other big plans, but there has been one promise that we have made to each other in the past that we still need to fully capitalize on, don't we? So potentially, if you're up for it in the summer, it'd be good to do a little Scotland trip again, and work towards Ben Nevis, which we keep saying we'll do, don't we, over the last couple of years, but never actually done. So that's definitely on the bucket list for this year, I think. But that's down to
Massively.
your availability.
Yeah, no, I was thinking as well when I asked the question that we actually shook on it at the bottom of Ben Nevis, that we would return to conquer the mountain, because I think when we were last there, it was like the hottest day on record in the south of England, and it was like an absolute snow blizzard at the top. So we bailed out, didn't we? But yeah, definitely up for that. Let's get to Scotland and maybe do a night in the Lake District on the way, like last time as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You've never done Ben Nevis before, have you? Will it be your first time?
Yeah, it will be the first time. So I know there's two different routes, isn't there? I think there's the pony trail, and then there's like a gnarlier one that apparently like actually is gnarly, not just like sort of like a numbed down English
Yeah,
gnarly, like it actually is on the hairline. But yeah, let's definitely go for it. That sounds like it will be a good adventure.
nice. And we've got our famous pub to revisit from the last podcast as well. We've got to make sure we check back in there as well.
I mean, yeah, he's certainly missed us, hasn't he, Cuff?
I think he's missed any form of sort of contact outside of that little town, to be honest. But yeah, no, I think that'll be a good trip if we can organise something like that in the summer. The only thing is, like, it's such a balance of Scotland, isn't it? Between going when it's like half decent weather and it's like nice to do, and you're not like having a trip like we had last time where it's like a just miserable wet slog the whole time. But then also, isn't it in summer when like the midges peak? Like it gets really bad, doesn't it? So we've got to
Yeah.
find that sweet spot this year of like when are those good few weeks to actually go and sort of get the best of both worlds from that. But yeah, something I'm definitely excited for if we can make it happen.
There's like maybe 1 week in the year where it's a good time to visit Scotland.
Well, that's the week. That's the week. Then you've answered it.
Because it's either torrential rain or midges, and I've seen in like August time, the midges are so abundant that it's not like you've just got a few bites. It's like your whole arm could just be slapped, and it would just come up with blood because your midges are all over you, which could be a headache. But yeah, cool. Scotland adventure, Ben Nevis. Let's do it, because I think if we don't do it this year, then it will be like, well, maybe 4 or 5 years since we shook on it.
No, we keep saying it, don't we? But we've never actually got around to it. But no, definitely, I think so. But I think, like you say, we should balance it right with like a trip up in the Lake District and then maybe back on the way down as well. Because I miss the Lake District. I haven't been to the Lake District in, God, probably like 8 years or something like that. So like, I'd love to go back. And obviously we went, but like not properly, right? We were only there just to stop over. But I'd like to do maybe like a day's hiking there as well on the way up. So yeah,
Yeah.
we should get a bit of a plan together.
The Lake District is like, it's obviously known as like the mountain mecca of England, but I think people go straight past it for Scotland, and they miss this kind of literal middle ground between the big mountains of Scotland and the lower levels of England. Yeah, I love the Lake District, and Scaffold Pike's there as well, so
Yeah.
we could do that as well as Ben
Yeah, I
Nevis.
could do the double, to be fair, because I've done Snowdon a few years back, but I've never done Scafell or Ben Nevis. So there you go. You could get the trio ticked off in one trip. That's the plan.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Okay, this is becoming bigger.
it is. It is. I knew it would evolve. It's not
But
quite the same as doing like the three peaks, is it? But it's I guess you can say you've done all three.
I was going to say as well, actually, that this is also to our downfall, is that we come up with what is a simple adventure, like going up Ben Nevis, and then it becomes bigger, and then it becomes massive, and then we're like, oh, we haven't got time for that.
Or we get to day 3 and we're knackered and we're like, the other 5 days we planned, no, can't be hacking that. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah, that's very like us to sort of plan a 5-day trek and then get to day 2 and be like, right, I think we've done our bit. Let's get to the pub.
Yeah. That's literally it. We haven't really changed our mindset, have we, since uni? Because we used to go to like lectures for like 4 hours and be like, right, time for the pub. And now it's like a day's worth of hiking. It's like, right, time for the pub. It's like you got to earn that reward a bit more than I think we do. But yeah.
So, of all the adventures, you got sea, sky, cold, hot, bike, boat, whatever you fancy. Which of all the adventures out there scares you the most?
Oh, without a doubt, Sky. If I'm going to pick one of those options you put to me there, I've always been like, I think I am. I was going to say I'm not afraid of heights, but I think I just am. Heights have just always been like a bit of a weakness, and I don't know. There's been chances I've had, like when I was in Australia with my partner, she did a skydive, and I could have done it with her. I was just like, no. I was like, no, not this time. And then I've always like countered it, right, with like I love diving and stuff like that, and that doesn't bother me at all, right? Like the sea is like, it's not, I know a lot of people find it quite daunting, right? And they find it like a really scary concept and quite claustrophobic when you go diving and stuff like that. I've just never found that. It's honestly, I'd say like the most peaceful like activity I could do is go diving, which is completely counter what a lot of mindsets are. But then if you try to make me skydive or do a bungee jump or something like that, absolutely not. That is just my worst nightmare. So yeah, I think like when I was 21, I don't know if I've ever told you this. When I was 21, my brother, I don't know if he knew I was afraid of heights, but I think he definitely sort of had a bit of a suspicion. And for my 21st birthday, he bought me a aerobatic plane experience. So put me in a little 2-man propeller plane with this South African, who's from South African Air Force, this guy flying this plane, and he put me in there with this, and this guy is like talking to me, he's telling me he's from South African Air Force. He's like, yeah, I used to work for South African Air Force, but I don't anymore. And I was like, oh, I was like, why not? I was like, why did you choose to do these like, gift card things over continuing the Air Force? He was like, wasn't my choice. And then we took off in this little 2-man plane. He's obviously been like fired from the South African Air Force. And as we went up in this 2-man plane, we were doing like the loops in it and flying upside down. And at one point he went up in the air and he stalled the engine and we just free fell in this plane that didn't have the propeller running for like, I don't know, 5 seconds before he re-kicked it on and that. And that was my 21st birthday present for my brother. And being like someone who's scared of heights, having to do that, I was just like, oh, I don't know if I can ever do anything like that again. So, yeah, it's just not turned me, even though I've experienced it.
Yeah, because I was gonna say, if you're experiencing like the extreme of your fear, does that kind of heighten the fear or does it conquer it?
I don't know, because to be honest, when I was actually in the plane, like when we were doing the loops and that, I wasn't actually scared. Like it was quite enjoyable. But then it was like the like build up to it and like the tension of getting in the plane. And even, I know it sounds weird, but even when we were landing, I got that fear back. As soon as we went back to like normal, I was like, oh, I don't like this now. Like, but when you're in that sort of middle ground, right, where you're doing all like the tricks and that, it just felt so like unreal, like that it almost didn't feel scary, like it didn't feel like real life. I know it sounds weird, but yeah, but then like I say, since then I've had the opportunities to do skydives and that and wimped out, if I'm being honest. So yeah, I don't think it's conquered it just yet, but it's something I'm definitely now I'm going to have to do in the next few years. But yeah, I don't think it's avoiding it.
I know that Ranulph Fiennes, he is scared of heights and he grew up in the same village as me in Lodsworth, which is crazy. And he would at night climb up all the houses and like jump across the roofs of the buildings. And he's got the classic signature on the bell at Eton College where there's only 2 names engraved in it because you have to climb up something like 30 foot of rope to get to this bell. And the only 2 names engraved now are Ranulph Fiennes and Bear Grylls. because they're the only two guys from Eastern who have done it. And he then went to summit Everest and came back down from the summit, and a week later he was at home and he couldn't even climb a ladder to fix a window. So he says how he never cured it despite doing so many things at a really high height. But he said in his book this analogy of, once your fear of something else becomes greater than the fear itself, that's only when you can conquer it in the moment. So there was one example he gave where he's also really scared of spiders. So he was out in the Middle East with an army that he was an officer for at the time, and he was new to this squadron, so he really wanted to gain their respect. And when they were camping out at night, they had these like massive spiders out there in the desert, and one of them had taken residence in his sleeping bag. And when he got into his sleeping bag, it crawled up his leg. Just this massive spider was climbing on his body. And he said in that moment, he knew all the men were looking at him, and he just picked it up calmly and put it to the side. And he said in that moment, his fear of losing the respect of his men was far greater than fear of the spider. And so he was just miraculously able to overcome it.
Oh, that's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. So what do I need to do to make me need to jump out of a plane? I don't quite know. Yeah, no, that's really interesting.
It's like, how do we find something scarier than jumping out of a plane?
That's quite the bar to set, to be honest, isn't it? That's not an easy one to beat, at least in my opinion. You've done it, haven't you, before, skydive?
No, I haven't done a skydive.
For some reason, I thought you had.
No, my girlfriend's done a skydive for like charity event and fundraisers, but I've never really seen the appeal of like paying for a high. Like I like the idea of like climbing a mountain and then feeling like the adrenaline rush of being on a peak or like on a really small spine, or like water skiing or something like that, but never like I'm gonna pay to do a bungee jump or anything like that. I've never quite understood why you would pay to do that.
Is that just a very long answer of saying that you're also scared of heights?
Yeah. Actually, yeah, it could be. I mean, everyone is to a point, right? Like you get to a certain height, and then some people are like, "Oh, I can't do this anymore," and then you get to like there's levels to it, right? Like at what point?
Yeah, I'm not actually that bad with height. Like if I'm going up a mountain or something, I won't usually it won't usually bother me. Or like, I know as silly as it sounds, but like I've done like, like when you get like the treetops courses and stuff like that, when you're like when you're a kid, all that sort of stuff like never used to bother me. It's only when like, the idea of like jumping and just falling, that's I think like probably quite a reasonable fear to have, but that's what I just can't stand the idea of like with skydiving or bungee or whatever it is. So but I sort of counter that with loving diving and stuff like that instead. So it's all give and take.
So you went on your trip out to Indonesia, and then I remember you came back and we met up in London before you were kind of starting your life again in the city, and you were getting a job and kind of like you had done your traveling at that point, and you just basically spent every penny you had on diving. What was that experience like, and what is that love for diving?
I don't really know where it came from. I've always loved the water, like ever since I was a kid. Like I've always loved swimming and sailing and all sorts. And probably comes from my dad because he's always been quite similar like that. So I've sort of grown up with it. But then when we were traveling, we knew that we wanted to do like our basic diving course just because it's something that I've always wanted to sort of try. And we did that in Malaysia. We did that in these series of islands in Malaysia. And like the first 2 times that I dove, it was horrible. Like I just felt so nervous. It was so like tense when you were diving. And then I remember like on the third dive we did, we went to a shipwreck. And as we went to the shipwreck, these like what's the word? Shoals of fish, like thousands of them, like came and swam around us. Like I mean, you couldn't see anything but fish. Like there was probably 10,000 of these fish swimming around the shipwreck and us. And I remember in that moment, I was so distracted by it, and so like focusing on that, I was just like, this is great. I was like, why am I so nervous? Like it just instantly clicked like that. And then we went on to, I did like further ones, did my advanced course in Bali and did some specialist dives in Komodo, which is one of the best dive sites in the world. It's the second best one in the world. And then since then, been back to Australia and done it in the Great Barrier Reef and that, and just loved it. And yeah, I've just always, I don't know what it is that I love about it. I think one is like I've always loved animals and stuff like that, and just the sort of the marine biologist part of it. Like that is like the dream job for me. I'd love to do that in an ideal world, and just seeing all of that underwater is so interesting because I don't know, you see so many like sci-fi films and so many, I don't know, just concepts of like alien life, and you'd be like, oh, how cool is that? Like, I wish Earth was like that, or something, you know, you get those ideas in your head. Then when you actually like just slow down and like when you're diving, you actually look around, you're like, it's pretty much the same. Like you sort of underappreciate how weird, I don't know, the world is. And you see that in diving, like when you see all these different types of corals and all the different types of like fish, and you're just like, God, it's so interesting when you actually take a moment and really look at what it is. And yeah, just loved it ever since. I don't do enough of it. I'd love to do more, but obviously living in Surrey, it's not exactly the easiest of places to do it very often. So very reliant on doing it on trips and stuff when we go abroad.
Virginia Water Lake down the road.
I know you do it in a Basingstoke Canal, maybe find a few dead bodies, but yeah.
Oh
No,
gosh, yeah.
unfortunately not.
Be careful of those towpaths. Okay, so when you're out there in Bali, you're doing these sorts of diving sessions. Like, what sort of crowd are there? And did you meet any of these people who are teaching you, who like really are living that life, and they're kind of, I guess, day in day out teaching diving? Like, who were these characters, and what was that school like?
Yeah, so the guy I've met very different characters. Like the guy that taught us our paddy when we were first learning was like, we called him the Malaysian James Bond. He was like the coolest dude ever. He was like this 60-year-old guy that looked 30, like slick black hair, like just so cool. He just like had a scar on his cheek, and he honestly looked like he was from a former life. And I was like, I don't know what it was about him, but anyone else would say the same if they met him. And he was just so calm and spoken, and so he was a really interesting character to get to know, but he was quite reserved and he was quite like professional, which is obviously the way they've got to be when they're like teaching you how to do like the foundational, you know, bits of diving. But then when I did my advanced in Bali, completely different experience, because there's this guy, and I'll never forget, he always talked about himself in third person. So like when I first met him, his name was Nico, and he had this really funny accent. I'm not even going to try and do it. But he came up to me outside of the dive school. He's like, Nico loves to meet you, like that. And I was like, oh, hi. Like, and every time he spoke about himself, he was like, Nico's thirsty, like, and he'd go and get a drink. It was a really bizarre.
Where's he from? Is he Belarusian?
Yeah, he was like, it's that sort of thing. He was like Russian, I don't know, Latvian, something like that. I don't know, but yeah, he was this really weird character, but at the same time, just a really funny guy. And he just used to like do really weird stuff all the time. Like we were once, I think he figured out I was pretty relaxed, like when diving, and he didn't need to be like super professional as long as he was like, because it's just one-on-one, just me and him. And then when we were doing one of our dives, he used to do this trick where he'd go like this on his head, and he'd flow like that, and a big bubble would come out, and he'd throw bubbles at people underwater. And he did that at this other instructor that was teaching another student, and the other instructor like flicked water, but where he flicked the water, all sand came up, and it got a bit like misty. And when the sand settled, Nico took his mask out and pretended to be drowning as a joke to this other instructor. And obviously I'd seen him do it. So I was like, what's he doing? I was like, he's taking his own mask out. And then the other instructor was having this panic underwater, like trying to get his secondary air supply. And then Nico just put it back in and started laughing at him. And I was just like, he just did stuff like that all the time underwater. It was so funny, but he was just an absolute nutcase. But yeah, he was good fun. And I remember there was another time where we were sitting in the back of this pickup, and they put the air tanks in the back of this pickup when we were driving between dive sites, and the latch that held the doors of the back of the pickup, upwards, came undone mid-driving, and it like flipped open this latch, and one of the air tanks rolled out, and it hit. And these things are like gas canisters, right? So like that could be quite. I don't know if they actually would ever explode, but like it rolled out and it hit the road as we were driving, and the driver obviously hadn't clocked, and Nico just looked at me and he went, "I'm not bothered." And then he just put the hatch back up and just left the air tank. Like, he was just such a funny guy. But yeah, he'd been, when I was speaking to him about like the history, I think he'd done something like 7,000 dives. He was like a dive master. It was absolutely crazy life, and he'd essentially just gone round from country to country since he was like 17. I don't know, he's probably like 35 at the time, just diving in every country and going to different dive schools, and that was his life. Like, really bizarre way to live, because first of all, like, they literally live in the dive school. It's not like, he had his own, well, at least in Bali, they were living in the dive school. So really sort of like communal way of living. But then also just like, I think he moved on every 6 months. So since he was 17, he'd never lived somewhere for more than like 6 months. And it wasn't like he was moving down the road, like he was going from country to country and trying all these different dive sites. He just absolutely loved it. And that's all he wanted to do with his life. So yeah, it was a really interesting character, but it did make me think, like, as much as I love diving, and I don't think I'd want to necessarily live like that. Like, it's more of a hobby, like a hobby I love rather than something I'd want to live by. But really interesting guy. And there's loads of people like that you meet in diving. It seems to attract interesting people to it. I think, like, sort of traveling type of people that want to just go to countries and keep moving on, and very like nomad lifestyle. But yeah, he's one interesting character from it, at least.
Yeah, it's intense. Like, I've always looked at these expats and thought, oh, that looks so cool. But you're there as like a traveler. You're there for
Yeah.
like a fleeting day or a month where you're just hanging out with them. But there's even times like on this podcast where I'm talking to adventurers and people who are all around the world, and like just trying to put a date in with them is crazy, because they're like, oh, I'm flying away that day, I'm in a different country that day. And I'm just like, whoa, like it makes you realize there are these people out there that just, there's no real like home. They're from one place to the next the whole time, just constant nomads working and living their life. And it seems fun, but I think like after a year of traveling, I was like, I'm tired. Like, I wanna just chill. And also have like familiarity as well. Like, you got your family and your mates and things like that. And the gym that you always go to. But yeah, what do you make of that life, like the whole expat nomad life? It seems to be more and more popular now.
No, yeah, I completely agree, and I completely get why people do it. Like, it is got so many pros to it, but at the same time, like you say, I'm too sort of family orientated, and I do like routine to a degree. I think routine can often be viewed as like quite a bad thing, but I don't think it is. I'd like a bit of structure. I think what I prefer to sort of live by is to have that routine and that structure in life, but then to make sure to sort of challenge that every couple of years and like try and do something a little bit different. That's what I think I prefer. I don't like that like completely chaotic way of living where you're traveling from place to place. You never know when your next job is. You never know, whatever it is that you're following. I agree. It's a hard way to live, but at the same time, though, like, I've met so many people when traveling, when me and Ella have been traveling, that you do look at and you're just like, you live such a cool life. Like, you're like, I've got to go back to, working in the city after this, and you're like out there, I don't know, doing whale tours and like stuff like that. Like, it's
It's
it's a cool way
mental,
of
isn't it?
living.
It's like
Yeah.
you get this insight into what's out there, and that's why I feel like traveling's so good for people, because it can't help but just massively open up your mind to the world and what's going on and how some people are living, and learning about different cultures, and just thinking like, oh, I want to keep a bit of that with me. And everything's relative as well, because I remember by the end of a year's traveling, like, I wanted nothing more than routine and home and discipline and structure. And now I'm in it. I'm like, I've also been injured for so long, and now I'm like, I want to 1, 2 break free.
I remember when you came back from your traveling, and you were just so excited to be back in England. Like I remember we went for a run in the park and that. I don't know how long it was after you got back, but it was quite soon after you got back. And you were just like the whole run, you were just talking about how much you loved England and like all the good things about England and like how you loved its weather and its food and the people are friendly when you actually look close and it's just a bit of a show and like there's so many things. And I remember like because obviously for me I was just normal routine. I'd been in England for last year or whatever, and I was just like, God, you're right. And I was like, I remember you coming back with such like a love for England despite being gone for a year, and it was it was sort of refreshing to see.
Gosh, what happened in the last year?
Turn into this withered, resentful person.
England made me like this. It's one of the great beauties of being able to leave your home country. It's like you start to realize how fucking cool it is of the gig that you've got at home, and like being able to kind of do whatever you want, have this sense of freedom. And also for people like you and I, like we're talking about, oh, let's go to Scotland, let's maybe go to Wales. And it's like you've got this country where in a drive you can be in a different country, a different geography. It's a cool place to be. I think particularly at the moment, like everyone's kind of shitting on the UK. And I get how, because like there's a lot of stuff going on. I think for me, it's like more to do with culture than anything. Like it feels like everything's kind of divided. But by the time I came back from traveling, I was like, this place is sick. Like it's obviously got shit things going for it, but every country's got shit things going for it. Like this country's got really cool things. I think it's more about probably knowing like what it is you want to do in that country. Then it really makes sense as to why you're there. Because by the time I was back in the UK, I was like, I'm here because I can start a business. Like it's very easy for me to do that. I'm here because it's full of adventurers and I can like go anywhere I want on cool adventures, and I've got family and friends. And then you start to like get very clear on the reason you're there, and that just generates this kind of innate or like a really genuine motivation to be here.
No, for sure. And it's nice to hear that, right? Because like you say, I don't know, as much of I completely agree there's like problems with UK, but I feel like you don't know how good you have it until like sometimes you go to countries that are truly deprived as well. And I feel like you're like our levels of expectation, because we've lived in quite a prosperous country, and one, on the whole, I know there are struggles in the UK, but on the whole we're quite a prosperous country. We've lived in that for like since the end of World War II, really. And it's like then your expectations for what is good in a country become so high that it's like that's why it becomes very easy for like I think the culture in the country to turn against it. But at the same time, you look at places like America, right? And when we've been to America, as my granddad used to live there, they are so patriotic and like so in love with their country. And it's like such a weird contrast to the UK, which is obviously quite a similar culture to the US in most ways. Like we had the same sort of values behind it and same sort of way that we operate in the countries, and just completely different mindsets to it. It's really interesting. But yeah
there's one thing I've been sort of looking into more and more. Actually, I've had absolutely no interest in America up until like the last maybe 6 months, because I think probably because I'm a startup founder. It's like a lot of media content and stuff that I watch is from American entrepreneurs and stuff like that, and they all say like how much enthusiasm there is, and how there's like people want you to do well in case you bring them with them, whereas in England they don't want you to do well in case you leave them. And that was how it was put on a podcast by Chris Williamson, and it made me think like, oh damn, like imagine what it's like to be in a place where someone's talking about like 4 failed startups that they've had, and like they had to get rid of all their staff and they lost a ton of money and now they're in loads of debt, and they wear it as like a badge of honor, as like, I've experienced all this stuff and number 5's going to be the one. Like,
I don't know
that
who's
was in
following
England.
that person, but I feel bad for them if it's number 4.
That's the thing, is like this. I think you have to kind of really understand England's natural disposition towards cynicism and kind
Yeah.
of like the whole like don't get big for your boots type attitude. But like once you can get that, then yeah, it's a pretty sick place to be, hopefully.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Nice.
All right, Cuffy. Well, one more point. Wild camping. You and I, we spent many a night in Dartmoor, and I thought it'd be good to chat about how sometimes we're losing the freedom to kind of wild camp wherever we want. We've spoken about Scotland, where you can wild camp wherever you like, but then places like Dartmoor, they can get bought up by some rich guys, and then they privatize the land and put in new rules in place. What do you think is like fair in terms of wild camping, and what is like you think is the best approach to it?
Yeah, I think it's a difficult one because like I don't think anyone should reserve the right, if it's a national park, to buy it, and like that's protected land, you know, that I think is almost owned by the public. So that's why it was like really, I don't know, it's hard to hear like when Dartmoor was going through that, because it's just almost like a gateway into other places as well. Like if that can happen there, where else is it going to happen to? But saying that, I think it was stopped in the end, wasn't it? I don't think that rule was ever actually enforced because of the amount of protests and that took place in Devon. But that was really good to see that actually sort of the voice of the protesters was actually heard against that. But no, I think I know we've got Dartmoor and I know we've got Scotland, but like we have so many other national parks, right? Like whether it's in you know, places like the New Forest and that you still can't wild camp. And I think it is a responsibility of the people wild camping, obviously, to treat it with respect, because I think that's probably where a lot of the fears come from. But at the same time, like, why not? Like, what's stopping it? You know, as long as everyone's respectful of the land. And in reality, I don't think the sort of natural people that do wild camp, they're not like coming in like mass. They're not really inexperienced people. Like usually if there are people like that maybe don't quite understand like how to behave in that, they'd usually go to a, you know, a campsite anyway. So if, you know, the mass wild campers, they're usually quite, you know, respectful people that sort of know, you know, sort of the rules of the land. But yeah, I'd love to see it more openly done. I think, you know, this obviously happens anyway, right? Like every national park gets wild camping in it anyway, and then people just, you know, never complaints actually coming against them. So it's a shame that sort of the laws stop that, and I think that probably puts people off who don't know wild camping and don't know that really it happens everywhere, because, you know, it's just like it's unneeded. So yeah, I don't know. I'd love to do it in more places. I've obviously had quite you know, less experience than you have. I've only wild camped in Dartmoor, Scotland, and where did we go back on the way down from Scotland? I can't remember now. Yorkshire Moors. But
Yorkshire Dale.
yeah, no, I'd love to see it more.
Yeah, it's no, you're right. Yeah, North York Moors, and it's good to have that freedom, being able to wild camp. I think one of the biggest misconceptions I had when I first went wild camping, so I went solo in the Brecon Beacons, and this farmer was coming up behind me on my first night, and he was on a quad bike in the distance, and I was like, oh shit. I was like, he's definitely coming to have a chat with me. I was like, what am I going to do? He's going to shift me on. I'm going to have to find like somewhere else to pitch up or something. And he comes over, he's like this 19-year-old on the quad. He's like, yeah, right, mate. I was like, yeah. He's like, you seen a sheep anywhere? I was like, no. It was like, all right, no worries. Have a good night. And I just drove off. And I remember thinking like how there's just this massive misconception, I think, that all farmers are going to like shoot you if you're on their land.
Yeah.
It's
I think they like most because obviously there's so many public pathways through farmland as well. Like it's almost part of like farming's history as well, though, isn't it? To like have access to their land, and that's what's so different, I think, with the UK to places like the US, because US is very much like if it's your land, it's private land, and you know trespassing is a huge thing. Whereas at least in most cases in the UK, farmers have had walkers and hikers using their land for like 50 years. So wild camping really isn't that much more of a stretch to that. I think it's just, yeah, like I say, it's just making sure that you treat it with respect when you do it, because I don't doubt that if they turned it into a bit more of a mass opening, then you would get those that would sort of do it in the wrong way. So maybe it's an educational thing as much as it is sort of a law change as well.
Yeah. Don't start getting, bonfires and leaving your rubbish and all that sort of stuff. That's never cool. And when stuff like that does happen, I quite like it when farmers just sort of deal with it on their own. I think it's quite a cool country code to live by. Cuffy, thank you very much for coming back on for your second time on this podcast. Been good chatting with you, mate.
No, thank you for having me. Good to chat things through. And yeah, I'm excited to see future episodes in the podcast. I've been following your LinkedIn closely and you've had some good guests. So yeah, interested to see who else is up and coming.
Yes, mate. Scotland this summer. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Nice one.
Cheers, Lord.